Welcome back to Game Time Discussions. I'm Emery Cuzzy. I'm sitting with Cameron Selby. And today we're going to go over the preseason week 2 takeaways. Not as much going on in week 2. A lot of teams rested some players. Something we're going to get used to as the season gets closer. But we were talking before the show, and Cam was talking about how even seemed like more teams had been resting players. It was a little weird this week. There's some teams that had 30-plus players rested.
Yeah, I was actually kind of shocked, to be honest. Typically, what it's been over the years, especially in the recent age of just some people just not playing starters at all, Sean McVay style or just whatever. Since we went to 3 games, it's been don't play a ton week 1, play at least a quarter or a couple possessions week 2, and then the final week, which now is week 3, used to be week 4. Let everybody divvy out because you got to cut 37 players.
Right.
And you got to figure out who's going to make the roster for those final 7 or even, all that, and then trade cut candidates, all that good stuff. This year there was less news. Last week we took about an hour and a half. We will not come close to that this week. Not a ton to go over. We'll try our best to kind of cover each game and just kind of important notes that we kind of took away from, of course, snap counts and stuff provided by Pro Football Focus and some good, very good informative tool. If you don't have a sub, I highly recommend it if you're a football nerd because they, help you dive into things you didn't even realize,
right,
even if you paid attention to every single thing.
Well, one thing too is if you actually go on PFF right now, they have all of the preseason week 1 and 2 fantasy football recaps free. So they're not paid. So you could even go look at them now if you wanted to. Yeah.
Before, quick tangent, we are going to eventually, it may not even be a year from now, maybe it could be even further down the road, but we're going to have our own optimizer and engine tools for fantasy lineups and all that stuff. For now, the best platform that you can use for ownership, because everybody charges for ownership.
Yeah.
PFF, you can see it for free.
Yeah.
And of course, you got to take it with a grain of salt. Not always up to date, and it only is for the main. But at the end of the day, it's a big resource because at the end of the day, when you see 10:30 starts and who's in, who's out, and all that stuff, and spikes in ownership and stuff like that, it reflects that on Sunday morning. So when we do those live streams on Sunday mornings, 8 to 11, we will be referring to that a lot because that's the best platform and resource we have. And also we want to be showing you what we're looking at, because if you are getting heavy into lines, you want to have as much content as you can for the price that you're doing. And if you're just new to the game, I don't want you to spend $150 on this person's Patreon and optimizer and stuff like that when you don't even know how to build lineups yourself. And this is a great resource and practice tool for it.
To add to that, when we do put out our own, we will not be charging people these insane amounts of money, because we realized, like, when we wanted to use an optimizer and we wanted the ownership tools, and these tools, like, they were so out of reach price wise that we'd rather be able to create it and sell it as a product that can be used by anybody. Because really right now it's just like there's people at the top that are sharks, kind of take over big contests, and then there's people that build by hand.
And honestly, like, me and Emery watch a lot of football. We pay attention to a lot of things, and we don't really rely on projections that much. We don't use, Yahoo has Javonte Williams projected 1.5 points higher than Ezekiel Elliott, we should start him. We have the gut feeling and the vibe. So I don't really care about that. I want to know what the ownership is on Sunday mornings when I'm like, I need a last guy in. I need somebody that can do the same thing as this guy, but this guy's 25% owned. This guy's 4%. Devontae Smith over Mike Evans? Sure.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Like, those kinds of things is what I want, and I wish I would have had when I started. It would have helped me kind of rise a little bit more, understanding, DFS and all that stuff. But that is a separate thing. I just want to bring that out. But yeah, we'll get right into it. The first game, it was a Thursday night game, Philadelphia Eagles versus the New England Patriots. Kind of a mixed bag of, some starters for the Patriots. We saw Drake May a little bit, and then Jacoby Brissett, which, he struggled a little bit in his limited time.
Right.
And Philly, not playing a ton of people, but we did kind of get a little bit of information from that side as well.
Yeah, so starting off, we can start on the Philadelphia side. Well, one guy that I mentioned last week about possibly being the number 3 on the team, Johnny Wilson. He is currently in concussion protocol. It just this close to the season, that can be a hindrance when you don't get to practice as much and stuff like that. So just monitor that. I don't think anybody's drafting him otherwise, though. And then the other thing is Kenneth Gainwell is the backup. He ran 8 out of 8 snaps with the starters.
Yeah, so that was a big thing because obviously Saquon is not playing this preseason, but he played every single snap on the first 2 drives,
Yep.
and right now in best ball he is free. He's going undrafted, and I don't think he ever rose up into the top 250 overall in terms of ADP on either site. And Will Shipley's been the guy to be the late round flyer, and I just don't think either one is really going to jump into Saquon's workload at all. But at the same time, if it's not broke, don't fix it. He's been, formidable and productive when he has gotten the opportunity. Week 1 last year, he was the guy, and then all of a sudden it was DeAndre Swift.
Right.
So, just take it with a grain of salt. But if you are getting Saquon shares, we do always recommend, especially if it is cheap and reasonable, getting a handcuff as the last person in, because it affects you more than it does others.
Right. And something that I will state with this team is that they might actually end up taking 4 running backs, which most teams only take 3, with Tyrion Davis-Price, just because of special teams and things like that. So that's an interesting thing to look out for, because when you have roster shifts like that, most teams take 3. When you take 4, they lose a position somewhere else. Wide receiver is normally one of those positions that kind of gets hit. For New England, though, Demario Douglas only ran routes from the slot. He had 0 routes in 12 personnel. Not that surprising. He did that last year, but it's something that as a fantasy owner, you have to kind of talk about, because if he's only on the field for, say, 60% of the plays, 65% of the plays, that hurts his value overall.
Right. And also he was a big dip, mainly because he had been kind of in and out with this hand injury. And so this was his first preseason action. So it was good to see him back, but it's not like he did anything to bring back where he was, which he was going in the middle of the 150s. Now he's back in the 180s in the 16th, 17th round. He'll probably stay that way just because of, how his production ended up. But also the concerning thing is Jalen Polk didn't really do a ton and didn't play a ton either. And it just kind of seems like a, KJ Osborne, Tyquan Thornton, just an annoying gnat of a receiver committee.
Yes.
And we've said before, even for Fantasy Flock, fellow Austinite Mason Dodd brought up how receivers on bad teams actually produce less to value more so than running backs do. So when we're trying to force up a Javon Baker highlight or a Jalen Polk highlight, you have to realize this is going to be a very, very slow burn.
Right.
And so you should, if you are going to be investing in these players, do not expect at all early in the season to have any kind of consistent production whatsoever.
Well, it almost feels like on this team, the only person that should have any real fantasy value of all of their skill players is Ramondre. Of course, we'll talk about him in a second, but Hunter Henry.
Yes.
But he hasn't played at all. And it wasn't because he was being held out, it's because he had an injury. So he's even in question. So I'm not comfortable drafting anybody on this offense.
And on top of that, we can't even forget to mention Kendrick Bourne is still in the pup.
Exactly.
And it doesn't sound like he will be missing time. Like we know some guys like TJ Hawkinson, Jonathan Brooks, Nick Chubb will probably miss some games to start the year. Well, with him, it's kind of up in the air a little bit.
Right.
But at the end of the day, all these receiver committee issues, that's going to be even worse with him in the fold. So just kind of be on the lookout, especially with the rising, especially Jalen Polk. He's now in the top 140. And so it's just kind of something to keep an eye on.
Yep. And then I want to say a little bit about Ramondre. 65% of the backfield snaps, 35% for Antonio Gibson. That seems what we should expect. So if you're drafting Ramondre, that's what you should have gotten anyways. Drake May, 4 drives, a field goal, a touchdown. Second half, he had 2 punts in a row, one, and then he basically fumbled a snap, and it kind of set a really bad tone from the start. But otherwise, he just looked okay.
Yeah, and no matter how bad Brissett looked, I just want to reemphasize, because we'll talk about and touch on Bo Nix, who seems like he's won the starting job week 1. They're 2 very, very, very different situations.
Oh, yeah.
One is literally the most starts in college football history, versus one guy who had a breakout sophomore year and then regressed his junior year
Mhm.
and is basically a very good project but talent. He's very talented, but went to the worst situation out of any rookie quarterback,
Yep.
including Spencer Rattler. So if you're going to say, "Oh, Jacoby Brissett is not all that," I promise you don't want to force him in there.
Right.
And it's not, "Hey, he's young, just put him in there," because Sam Darnold is a prime example of a guy with a lot of talent that if you force in a bad situation, it will destroy him.
Yes.
I promise you. So if you're a New England fan and you're frustrated with Jacoby Brissett, just
wait.
just
wait.
kind of clench your butt
It's okay.
cheeks and
It's
just like,
okay. Just
this is going to be a rough year, but it's for the better if he just kind of sits the majority or if not all of the season, unless there's injury, of course.
right.
But I mean, even Joe Milton, like, throw him to the wolves. Don't destroy Drake May.
Right.
You have way too much invested in him to throw him into this kind of situation.
I was almost going to say Joe Milton's the only other player that has a worse situation
Yeah.
out of all the guys. But yeah, and then one thing I want to add is the pass rush was solid. 4 sacks early in the game, and then that's without Matthew Judon. So you want to kind of, I just wanted to add that because I thought
Keon White has
was
been
good.
having a really, really good
Yeah.
camp and preseason so far.
Right.
And worth mentioning on New England because they always seem to find edge rushers late in the draft. That's
Yeah,
one area of the draft they're pretty good at.
Yep. And then we'll move to the next game. Very easy game to talk about. Atlanta. Michael Penix didn't play, and so they're just, I guess, super excited about him. I don't really know what's happening with that whole thing.
Literally, I can't even take anything away from anything in this game for either side. Both of them even rested their twos, essentially. The only thing to take away, like you said, is Michael Penix is not playing this preseason, and you don't really see that on like for-sure backup quarterbacks. So that's kind of interesting. And again, I've said before, Kirk Cousins, I enjoy pieces of this Atlanta offense, but if you're going to take him, you should really invest in Michael Penix as a late round flyer if you want to go 3 quarterbacks, because one, it's a safety blanket if he is not back to health, but also I don't see a drop off in talent or production from Bijan, Drake London, or Kyle Pitts if Michael Penix comes in, because he is actually one of the more pro ready quarterbacks in this class.
Oh, 20, like him and Bo Nix are the 24-year-olds that we talk about.
And you're talking about differentiation and stuff like that. He's been undrafted all summer long, and he will stay that way. So if you're the only one that has shares, and say Kirk goes down again, or if he gets benched like a Jimmy Garoppolo or Derek Carr kind of thing,
right?
Michael Penix, the second half of the season, you're the only one that's going to benefit from that.
Yep. And it's a weird situation with this whole Penix thing. They're treating him almost like a starter. I don't really understand it, but that's okay. That's their thing. I'm not an Atlanta fan, and I don't get to play in the NFC South. So.
Oh, but 2 things worth mentioning with Atlanta, though. They did pick up 2 very, very good NFL veterans on the defensive side. Justin Simmons has been a long-time great Pro Bowl caliber safety. And then we had Matthew Judon, who was traded from New England for a third-round pick.
Rounder, yeah.
Essentially, it was down to Chicago and Atlanta. He ended up being the tiebreaker to choose Atlanta, and so they have needed pass rush for 4 straight drafts. We've been putting pass rushers there every year, and they finally got a aging but still somewhat exiting his prime Matthew Judon. So that'll definitely help on both the pass rush and the secondary.
It'll be improved. I do want to say Ruka Rororo got a sack, just because I know that everybody we hated on the second overall pick. It's not that he's bad at football, it's just that we liked other people, but he did get a sack in the game, so that was good to see. And then McClellan and Washington for RB3 battle right now. It's basically split down the middle. They had 50-50 snaps, so nothing much to say there. And then on the Baltimore side, Tez Walker's basically a 7th on the depth chart, so he probably still suits up and travels, but he's just, it's impossible to see him making
no fantasy value whatsoever.
Exactly. Josh Johnson was 11 for 11 as the starter, which was cool. Which, I mean, they didn't play well last week. They were terrible last week. So improved 21 of 25 for all 3 quarterbacks. And then Raheem Ali, the guy that we talked about a little bit last week, he missed with an injury that came out of that game that wasn't really talked about prior. But that's about it.
Yeah, but this next game we'll have a lot more to talk about because both starters did play, and we're talking about. Oh, I'm one game before. I
Are you?
apologize.
Okay. It's like
But
I
yeah, we're
didn't
going
know.
to Cincinnati, Chicago. Mixed bag. Obviously, Cincinnati is not doing a ton. Jamar Chase is still sitting out.
Mhm.
Joe Burrow, they're being very cautious with for good reason. But even this week, they took out T. Higgins and Chase Brown and Zach Moss and all these guys. So it was really just kind of they're punting on the rest of this, and they're going to let the backups kind of take it away. Um, I guess the only fantasy relevant thing is just Jermaine Burton, another 19-yard reception. Technically, he's leading, I guess, all rookies in preseason production right now, but it's all.
Over Jordan Whittington? I think Jordan Whittington
Oh,
has
okay.
more.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I was thinking
Otherwise,
yards wise because he was the only one with 86 last week. But
uh,
regardless,
yeah.
just take it with a grain of salt because he's playing behind a lot of guys right now. And again, Iosivas, he didn't play in this game,
Right.
and
Or
he
Trent
took
Irvin.
all the slot snaps last week.
Mhm.
So with the ones, so he's that guy at least in the short term. Maybe it's a long term thing, but just kind of take that with a grain of salt as well.
Well, it was good to see the Burton. He started and he played with the ones, which was way better than last week where he was a third quarter guy. He played 14 out of 33 snaps with the ones. He started the game, came out like third play though, so it wasn't like he was in there for a long time. Evan McPherson got extended. That was something that they wanted. They did for 3 years, $16.5 million. On the defensive side of the ball, Chris Jenkins, we talked about him last week. He's the DT from Michigan. He again impressed, which was good to see. And then the biggest thing on their whole plate, if you ask me, is they had 11 penalties, which is just a lot of penalties. So, is he the? Is Christian Jones on their team? Is that the one that I'm thinking of? We'll talk about that in a little bit. I think it's another team. That's my bad.
That's Carl Jones, actually.
Carl.
Or do they have two?
The offensive tackle, Christian Jones. He plays. Yeah, he's. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah,
my bad.
But otherwise, yeah, nothing really for Cincinnati. And then on the Chicago side, there's a lot of interesting things actually, which was good to see. Adunze is still out on 12 personnel. Not surprised by that. He's the slot. Everett and Komet. Everett played 6 snaps with the starters. Komet played 3. Don't draft Cole Komet right now. Swift and Rojo sit, and then we can talk about Caleb Williams. So
yeah, I mean he, the stats are going to jump out at you 6 for 13 for 75, but just continuous highlight plays and rollouts and darts that doesn't count as touchdowns. But I don't know if you saw the back of the end zone.
Yeah,
just incredible kinds of throws, and then he runs one in. So yeah, we are very high on Caleb Williams and Chicago in general. We've been talking about him all summer, and nothing's really changed from that. Another thing is just Khalil Herbert, like you said, with Rojo and Swift being out, starting and playing most of the snaps with the ones and looking good doing it.
Yeah, he's good.
I don't know if they're going to keep him still, but if they do, he still has value in that offense. That's just only going to hinder Roshan more so. But even if this is a 60-40 kind of thing, this is a poor man's David Montgomery. And it could end up being a not so poor thing, depending on how efficient he stays. Because if he keeps busting 6 yards a clip, we might be in for a really home run of a steal that we've been calling out all summer long.
One thing I will say is Rojo sat last week, and I don't know why he's sitting. It's not like he has an injury designation on.
Yeah, it's like an undisclosed issue that he's doing. So it's not good, it's not bad, but his ADP is just kind of staying where it is right now.
Yep.
To me, we're just kind of still at this point taking him if we're also taking Khalil, just because they either are paired together, or if Khalil Herbert moves on, that Roshan jumps right into that role. And again, we are not bullish on DeAndre Swift and keeping just a workhorse kind of role with this team.
Right, and I think if Rojo is the only other running back, he's getting all the goal line touches. So that makes me excited. But yeah, that's basically all I have. Other thing I wrote was Caleb Williams started slow. He was 2 for 6 with 3 and outs, and then he obviously, based on stats, played better and was much better after that. But yeah, nothing to really say. He's good at football. And then I'm going to New York Giants.
That was the game that I had it switched, so I guess ESPN has it a little different, but it's okay. But yeah, so what I was gonna say was the Giants and Texans. You had a lot to take from both sides of this game. Probably the last time we'll see, Texans having a ton of looks, but once again, Nico and Stephon Diggs are the wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 on this team. It's not Tank Dell.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be distracted by the deep touchdown. He'll have one occasionally, but it's going to be really hard to trust him on a weekly basis based on the snap counts. And, going 10 for 17 in terms of getting in and then only running routes on 6 of them,
Right.
that's not good enough production for a late 4th, early 5th round pick.
He was 0 snaps in 12 personnel. Only participated in 60% of the route participation with the ones. It's just not enough for him to be viable every week. Like as a start, like it's fine to get him as a wide receiver 4, but
yes,
you have to pay for him. Like he's too
literally
expensive.
ADP right now after week 2. It is Stephon Diggs, the 2 quarterbacks of Mahomes and Hurts, and then Dell.
Right.
And Dell is creeping to pass. He's been doing that for a couple weeks now. And I don't know if he should or if he will pass him in ADP, but he shouldn't even be that close. And we've just kind of been beating that drum all summer.
I feel like we're going to be right on this one. It just like at this point, looking at it, it's like, okay, the numbers don't lie. The players don't lie.
If we kind of quickly go back to Chicago real quick, they have another 3-headed monster. And we've been kind of banging the drum for Keenan, right? And so he's 230 now, which we have zero concerns about. But there's an age factor of him being, going on 32.
Right.
And Rome Odunze being much more talented than Tank Dell is. So him pushing and being capable of having, 2 receiver set snaps. Tank Dell is not capable of being on the field in 2 receiver sets if you're going to rely on him as a blocker. So essentially, it's just kind of you're behind 2 more talented receivers, and it's going to be really hard unless both of them or one of them goes down with injuries that you're just going to have consistent play.
So just talking about Houston, Brevin Jordan is above Cade Stover on snaps. He's just, I think he didn't play in the first game, came in this game. He obviously was above based on snap counts. And then Dameon Pierce ran 9 out of 13 routes, which I thought was really interesting. I didn't expect that.
Yeah, he's been having a lot of snaps. With Joe Mixon on the mend, he hasn't participated at all in the last couple of weeks. Problem is he's not being efficient with it. But you have a guy like Cam Akers who's coming off his second Achilles injury. I'm not saying he's going to unseat Dameon Pierce, but he's having a great preseason, trying to keep his career alive. So Dameon Pierce, you're getting the opportunities, you're still not making the most of them. A little concerning. I want to dive a little bit more into it of why, he's not being productive, because he just went from a 6 yards a clip guy to all of a sudden getting unseated by Devin Singletary. Now it's just like you're getting outperformed by him and guys that won't even make the roster.
Yep, him and CEH are kind of the same player in my opinion on that whole thing. But going to the Giants, Singletary's the workhorse. He had 88% of the snaps. That's crazy to me, but it is what it is because they just don't have anybody else that they're comfortable with. If you look at the screen, Eric Gray had 5 receptions for 22 yards. I think that he could play some of that third down role if Tyron Tracy's not here.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing, is that the takeaway last week, Tyron Tracy played most of the snaps early on, and he played well, but then Eric Gray had the touchdowns, and we're like, slow your roll a little bit. And then Tyron Tracy goes down with a non-contact injury in practice on a kickoff, and we're just like, oh, he's gone. And it was kind of much ado about nothing. He's already practicing.
Yeah.
But he missed this game, and obviously Eric Gray stepped in, and he's done well so far. I just don't see him unseating Tracy at all. And it just kind of depends on, because if Tracy's already practicing, he's going to be ready week 1. How long does it take until he even eats into the slightest workload of Devin Singletary? I
feel like it's going to be one of those like 60-40 kind of things. And no one is going to be viable, basically, is what it feels like. Theo Johnson started over Bellinger and ran 11 routes out of the 18 plays, which I thought was good. But no one in this tight end grouping is viable. It's just if you wanted to take like a 20th round flyer in best ball, you could on him. If you needed a third tight end, I guess. 3 tight ends played a total of 46 plays and 33 snaps. So a lot of 12 personnel. Thought that was interesting. And then I wanted to hear your take on Hyatt versus Slayton. I think I'm on the side that Slayton is the starter.
So
And
yeah, at this point, we've actually had more. We've gotten shares of both, but we've gotten way more Hyatt
yeah,
just because we thought this could be a breakout year, and in terms of breakout, low tier like poor man's breakout, like 600 yards, but the occasional 18-point game. But Darius Slayton, like we said, back to back years with over 700 yards, and he is still producing. He's getting targets, and he's running with the 2 receiver sets. Like at this point, you just kind of got to read the tea leaves and just if there's going to be a preference and it's this guy versus that guy, he's showing that he's the guy for now.
right. So Daniel Jones, sorry. Daniel Jones looked awful. He
That's an understatement.
looked, yeah. I mean, forced that ball to the sideline and pick 6 on the 3-yard line or whatever. Yeah, it was just a tough outing for the Giants, to at least for people to watch. If you're a Giants fan, you are in the New England boat where you just need to wait for something good to happen.
Yeah,
you just don't have a backup quarterback that's a rookie.
This by default is going to be the worst team in the NFL to me this year, and it's because of quarterback play. Because when he goes out, it doesn't get much better.
No,
and the problem is that if you're talking fantasy relevance, right? Malik Neighbors rising up draft boards. I'm seeing him in the late second round on best ball now. All of his production and these highlight plays, he's making tons of them, are all coming against the 2s or after Daniel Jones sucks against the 1s. Like that's essentially what it is. And so I understand he's making these plays. He's probably going to flirt with or exceed 1,000 yards, but he's going to have like 4 or 5 touchdowns and it's going to be inconsistent. And he's going to have days where he's like 4 for 30 yards and he's getting frustrated and there's nothing you can do about it. And that is the exact recipe of a guy that you should not be drafting in the second and third round of your fantasy football leagues.
It's not that we don't like him. Like he was the second ranked wide receiver on our board. Like, and he's showing that he probably is either the first or second best wide receiver in this class. He just can't do it without good quarterback play. You have to do. I mean, you get what you get. Kind of is that kind of thing. And when you're drafted so early to a team that has poor quarterback play and a bunch of 2s and 3s around you, you're not going to be able to, push yourself to a level where you can, really be fantasy relevant in your first year at least.
Yeah, and again, we think he'll hit 1,000 yards. Like his props aren't that bad on Prize Picks and Underdog right now. We did a video about our favorite props and stuff like that, and he wasn't on there just because it's hard to trust the situation, especially with Daniel Jones. And if it's not Daniel Jones, it's Drew Lock, but he went down with injury. So then what is it after that? It's Brian Daboll probably gets fired if they start out 1-6 or whatever. And then it's just they're the one team capable of tanking just because they really have nothing. The only thing that's really positive is they have a really good front 7.
They
but
do.
you know what? Carolina has a really good front 7, and they absolutely sucked last year. And they had the worst record and would have had Caleb Williams had they not screwed up in their trade. And I just see this being the same way. They're going to be a very talented or formidable defense that it's just like it's going to bend and just going to avalanche once you just like we have to start on our own side of the field again.
Yeah, and if you can only score like
12 points,
yeah.
How do you even envision this team scoring 14 points a game?
I don't. It's like maybe they get 14 this week and 10 this week, and so yeah, 12 points makes a lot of sense. It's just I don't know. It's a tough situation to be in, especially for such a good young defense too. Yeah, I don't know what to do with the Giants. I mean, I know that I'm picking them to possibly be last place in the whole NFL. And that's hard to say when you have other teams like New England and these teams that are rebuilding. Like the Giants shouldn't be rebuilding, like based on the age and talent that they have on defense, but they're going to be. So, yeah, we'll jump to the next game. It is going to be Kansas City and Detroit. Let's see. Okay.
So this one's kind of a one-sided thing. Obviously, Detroit, Dan Campbell has kind of followed the route of just, I don't care about preseason. We're going to bite kneecaps week 1 and figure it out. And it worked last year when they upset the Chiefs in the opener. lo and behold, that was without Travis Kelce and Jones. That's neither here nor there. But Kansas City actually played a ton with Mahomes and Rice, and where they obviously Marquise Brown sat. Sounds like he's going to be missing week 1,
Yeah.
possibly week 2. Not a long-term injury, but it's something that, and then we were wondering, one of the biggest questions, who's going to step up? And we obviously saw the answer is Justin Watson.
Yep. He is the X receiver, I guess, for them is what I think he plays. And I think Worthy and Rice basically can play slot or outside. Worthy, Rice, and Watson had 80% plus of the snaps. Worthy's better than Moore, as you can see. You can't see what we're seeing, but Watson had 16 snaps and Sky Moore had 2 for the starters. It's basically a one-sided deal.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that was interesting was Carson Steele was the RB2. CEH was out, so Carson Steele came in as the RB2, and he started over Prince.
Yeah, that was interesting. Didn't expect that. He hadn't been running at all with the twos or even ones all camp. And then he comes in and, he doesn't do anything to be like, oh yeah, I see why they did that. Because
Right.
he has 5 yards on 5 touches. So
he had 3 for 8.
and 2 for -3.
And 2 for -3.
So
Awesome.
he had 5 for 5, and then Deneric Prince comes in right after him, and obviously this is
Later.
Against backups and third stringers and whatnot. But he goes 8 for 54 in terms of all-purpose
right
touches.
He was 6 for 6, and then he had a 41-yard play. But yeah, so that always makes it seem better. But it's just
True.
That was so weird. It's such a weird rotation to me, considering we were expecting one way, and that's how the NFL works. It goes the other. But yeah, nothing really crazy though that stood out with the starters. Patrick Mahomes had a behind the back pass, I guess. That was cool.
That was cool. And then Kingsley Suamataia, he is him.
Yes.
And he is going to be a very, very good left tackle this year. Even better than we even thought at this point.
He is going to, well, kind of comparing, like when we were doing the draft stuff, it's like I was comparing him kind of in the way that you would look at what's the guy from Washington, played left tackle for them last year, Washington Huskies.
Oh,
the big Samoan that's playing for Pittsburgh that I can't think of the name of right now.
Trofano?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Fatanu is like a guy that had long arms, shorter, 6'4", 6'5", and that's the same that Suamataia is, and it just seemed like I guess he got the better end of it. At the end of the day, he's in a more pass comfortable offense rather than the heavy run that Pittsburgh's doing, and so I guess he's kind of taking advantage of that, and it's really cool to see. I don't really have anything else for Kansas City though. There's not too much.
Not a ton to look at. They're going to be very good.
Yeah,
probably. We'll save that for our final picks and predictions and stuff.
I'm so excited for bold predictions comes out Friday, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Get so the next game we're going to look at is Minnesota Cleveland. I have a really fun thing that I saw. But Naylor is wide receiver 3. That's that. Otherwise, Lewis Sign, the safety, is his stat line was crazy. 11 total tackles, 5 assists, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, 1 interception, 1 pass breakup, and 2 QB hits. That is awesome. And he didn't play the whole game.
I know.
Like that's the part that's crazy.
That's pretty sick.
Say he played a half. Like those numbers are awesome. So just putting that out there.
Yeah, and again, like we said, Jalen Naylor, he's goes 19 of 21 in terms of snap counts. Brandon Powell is probably his biggest competition, goes 13 of 21. Both of them get 2 targets. Naylor goes 1 for 31. Brandon Powell goes 2 for 19. Both of them are formidable, and definitely is something to keep an eye on with Jordan Addison. There's no updates from his. I don't even know if they've called it like a high ankle sprain,
right?
But it was an inverted, uncommon or untraditional, I guess, ankle sprain that could, affect his week 1 status. Both of them are free, and if Jordan Addison's out, we might be talking about these guys a lot because they are playing the Giants,
and they are dirt cheap.
Yep,
they cost nothing.
They're free.
Yeah, so yeah, it's gonna be awesome. One guy that we didn't talk about, but we need to, just because, look, The Minnesota Vikings have no corners. It is what it is. Stephon Diggs is there now, right? That signing happened.
Stephon
Gilmore. Yeah. Sorry. Stephon Gilmore is signed to play for them, which is good. That helps them. But a rookie, Dwight McGlothern, had a 90-yard interception, which was good to see because they need production at the cornerback position. I don't even know who they're like. I know they lost everybody basically.
Yeah. Fortunately, had again their Kyrie Jackson passed away,
Right.
and but right now it's Byron Murphy, former first round bust, Shaq Griffin, another guy that's been bouncing around for a couple years now, and then Stephon Gilmore, the safety tandem of whether it be Lewis Cine, like you said, or Cameron Bynum, not bad, and Harrison Smith,
Right,
is still kicking.
Yeah.
So
I think they're putting Sign in the slot mostly, though. That's why he's
okay,
been.
okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I think he's starting for them.
Well, right now and again, that's why depth charts you can't really look at. But
Right.
Lewis Cine is the fourth string strong safety,
Okay.
so
Well,
that's why you can't really take away
I don't think that's
anything.
true.
Exactly.
But yeah. So, and then let's look at the Browns. Nothing really that really stood out offensively. Funny enough, they sat both Winston and Watson, so neither quarterback was there. They played DTR and Tyler Huntley. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I mean, both of them, threw for yards, decent. Completion percentage fine. Both turned the ball over though. They've always been kind of a similar player. Huntley's been kind of a Lamar Jackson, backup that's done okay, but I don't know. Cleveland seems to have a knack for loving to play the third string quarterback at some point in the season, so one of them is going to benefit from that. But it's not like either separated themselves from winning the job,
right.
at least based on these preseason games.
And then Michael Hall was arrested earlier this week. He was a rookie second rounder or
I
third
think he was
rounder.
third rounder.
Third
He would
rounder.
have been a second or even flirting with the first, but just kind of character issues. And
Yeah, and he can't stop the run. That doesn't help either.
Yeah.
So, and then one other person that I wanted to talk about was James Hudson. He's the left tackle. He injured his ankle, which adds to Jedrick Wills and Jack Conklin being injured. And then if Ifedi and oh man, I'm gonna butcher this. Adeniji were also hurt, so they have 5 guys that are at least on a Q tag right now going into this next week.
Mhm.
So they have basically nobody to play their tackle spots.
And yeah,
makes it
it's
interesting.
definitely interesting because it's you don't really see this matchup often, obviously, and it's not one that really comes to mind. But Dallas and Cleveland is week 1.
Oh,
Cleveland's actually favored at the moment because they're at home, small favorite. Who
yeah,
knows if that could flip? But I mean that I thought was a really big trap game, but they just have so many injuries kind of going on. It's hard to kind of bet that with confidence at the moment, I guess. And then Amari Cooper, obviously, he's kind of has an undisclosed thing
Mhm.
going on too. That he played last week for a little bit, and then didn't practice all week.
Right.
Not really saying why. So just kind of worth keeping an eye on there as well. One positive thing, at least, Deontay Foreman 2 weeks ago was carted off the field, neck
Mhm.
/ head injury. Very concerning. He was fighting for the RB3 spot against Pierre Strong, and then that's especially important with Nick Chubb, who's likely going to miss at least the month of September. He comes back and he is very, very productive. Not on the ground, at least. He goes 10 for 18. Does punch one in, but then 5 for 46 as a pass catcher is always pleasant when you're a running back. He's always been serviceable. I always loved him out of Texas. I think he came out a little early, but he kind of had to after going for 2,000 yards.
Right.
But then he tears his Achilles early on in his career, and he's gotten back to being serviceable, but he's just kind of been a journeyman since then. So hopefully he can kind of continue building on the momentum, and he'll have another role with Cleveland this year, who has always done well at catering to their running backs.
Oh yeah. And then we'll go to the next game. I got Buffalo versus Pittsburgh here. First guy I want to talk about. Well, Curtis Samuel sits with a little bit of an injury. I don't know how long it's going to be. It's week to week right now with the toe injury.
It's a turf toe. So it kind of depends on how mild or medium, but medium turf toes can take 4 weeks at times, and that definitely puts him out week 1. So it was very interesting it'll be very interesting to look into. Everybody, and I said this in a tweet today, everybody's going to be like, close Shakir to the moon. he didn't play on any of the 2 receiver sets,
Nope.
and he doesn't play in the backfield or as a scat player that Curtis Samuel was doing, and I just don't see him having any kind of rise like he's going to in drafts. He's probably going to crack the top 100 soon, and maybe flirt. I mean, Curtis Samuel rose to like the early 90s.
Mhm.
That's kind of where I feel like he will eventually go if Samuel's out the rest of the preseason. Much ado about nothing, but it does give us a little bit more concern because we do have some shares of Curtis.
Yeah, Matt Collins actually ran more routes than Curtis Samuel.
Mhm.
I mean, than Khalil Shakur, which is really, really bad because Matt Collins, I think, was behind even Chase Claypool before he got injured. Adding to their wide receiver injuries, Marcus Valdez-Scantling is injured. Not sure what the timeline for him is.
Yeah, I mean, Buffalo got hurt more than anybody based on injuries. Obviously, Josh Allen was the only starter that didn't play.
Right.
And Mitch Trubisky did, and now he's out multiple weeks with an injury. So is MVS, like you said. He was probably going to be taking a lot of the 2 receiver set snaps. So Matt Collins is probably stepping into that role.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously DeMar Hamlin, who was well known for his heart issue that took place at the end of 2022. He hurt his hamstring, so he'll be week to week as well. Curtis Samuel, they just kind of got battered this week.
Mm-hmm. And then I want to say that Ray Davis is a good handcuff and could
Yes.
really vulture some goal line stuff. We talked about Ray Davis as like the style of player. He's the perfect fit to a guy like James Cook because James Cook is more of an athlete, catch the ball out of the backfield. Ray Davis is like one cut and go type of guy. So I think he could steal some goal line touches and some, middle of the field touches. He's not going to probably get very many passes though.
That is one guy in terms of best ball. We haven't really taken many shares at all of James Cook. He's less than 5% owned, I believe, on both of us. But Ray Davis, we haven't really gotten much of either. And he's a guy that was going right in the middle of the Kamanis and the Bucky Irvings and these Tyrone Tracy dart throw rookie that, we'll see if an injury happens. And he's the one that's looked the best out of all of them. And it's not even close. So, definitely wish we would have more shares on him. Maybe we'll get some before it gets too late. But yeah, he's looked really, really nice in limited time.
And then some defensive news. Gregory Rousseau had 2.5 sacks, which is cool. Very good football player out of Miami. And then Matt Milano tore his bicep. He is now out indefinitely. Right. But he one thing I will say is they have a backup, Joe Andreessen. He is from Buffalo. He is the University of Buffalo player. He had 12 tackles, so that's good to see.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's always good for guys that are from that area. And then we can go to Pittsburgh. Fields is greater than Russ.
Yeah, so Russ got the nod in this game. Remember, he hasn't been playing for a couple weeks due to a calf ailment. Justin Fields has been doing a lot with the ones. He's done really well in practice. In games last week, it was kind of spotty because, he did muff 2 snaps, but otherwise looked fine.
Yep.
Pittsburgh as a whole just looked bad offensively. And I don't think as much of that fell on Fields as much as just the dysfunction. Broderick Jones got bullied. I believe that was Gregory Rousseau that
I think so.
That embarrassed him on a snap or on a sack snap.
Yes, I think that was him. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so they just don't look very good at all on offense. But Justin Fields, obviously, there was one kind of debated play of overthrowing a touchdown, but that's a lot of that had to do with the receiver slowing down, and obviously it's not in stride. But a George Pickens, who's very good at making acrobatic catches, probably would come down with it. So that's kind of neither here nor there. But what's true is just like you said, he looked better than Russell Wilson, and I just don't see why that they would just even entertain the narrative of let's go with Russ.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what he provides that, at this point you're looking to find the next heir, and it's not Russ.
Right.
So if you continue to start Russ, that's just putting Justin Fields in a light where it's just like, well, I'm not going to pay you at the end of the season, and he's not going to want to play with you. And then it's just going to be another kind of where are we next year?
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to do another thing where they bring in somebody like Jimmy G or short-term starter, and maybe they figured out, but they're too good to be in the top 10 of the draft.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of frustrating in that regard. But again, like we said, we're talking about best ball, like we said. Justin Fields could be the home run of the year for us because of how many shares we have if they just give him the ball and say, do something.
Yes.
And maybe from a football perspective, he may not win the job or win the hearts of Pittsburgh fans and may not be the future. But at least from a fantasy perspective, he will pan out.
He's good
in
at
in a
fantasy.
big way. So
next guy, Pat Fryermuth, only played 11 out of 21 starter plays. He did have the bulk of the routes. And then Jaylen Warren has his injury that we tweeted about earlier.
Yeah, that was the biggest injury news, was that he went out and he's out multiple weeks with an injury to his hammy. That provides more risk, but he should not miss much time at all.
Right.
And on top of that, in this game, he actually played the first snap, and they were true 50-50 with him and Najee. Both of them did fine. I'm sorry, Jaylen Warren got hurt on his was it his first touch? So,
yes.
So he didn't play this game as much as he did last week. But if you took the stand on Jaylen Warren being the guy, you shouldn't just jump ship and say, "Oh, only Najee Harris from here." Buy the dip, because he will dip back to kind of where he was, which is like the 105, 110 range, and either handcuff them both or just don't let the Najee rise fool you if you're that party.
Exactly.
Obviously, we took the stand on Najee. Fortunately, the injury is working in our favor at the moment, but it doesn't make me feel like, oh, now it's the Najee show. He's just, even when Jaylen Warren gets back, he's just going to take all the important touches. Like, it's going to be a split backfield.
Yep.
So just I wouldn't make this take a stand or change your stance on either guy.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen all day people saying, oh yeah, Jaylen Warren going way down my rankings, blah, blah, blah. And if you feel that way, then you were wrong to begin with. That's kind of how I view it.
Other guy to mention, Peyton Wilson went into concussion protocol after we talked about him last week as playing well. But otherwise, we can get to the next game.
Okay.
Let's go check out. It's going to be Washington and Miami. There they are. And Jaden Daniels looked great. Tua looked great. Not much to really say about the quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels has been named QB1 for week 1, which is exactly what we expected.
Now official.
Yeah.
The one biggest thing that kind of came out this week was just Jahan Dotson was what we thought he's stepping into a really potential role to be the true wide receiver 2, taking all the slot snaps and positive stuff. And then Dan Quinn comes out and says, we're still looking for a wide receiver 2. And now there's a flurry of, oh, Jahan Dotson isn't anything. Don't believe in him. Like, easy fade. And then he still runs 16 out of 18 with the ones.
Yeah, don't buy the narrative.
I don't know if he will produce with that, but at the end of the day, he has the opportunity right now. And even if maybe he's not making the most of it, I don't see anything that says he isn't or suggests he isn't.
Right.
But nobody else is doing anything to just overtake that. I mean, De'Ami Brown is still just kind of, he had 3 for 19.
Yeah.
Like, not impressive. He was the burner guy coming out of UNC. And then Olamide Zaccheaus, okay. I don't know why you would force that at all. I mean, Luke McCaffrey actually had a couple of nice grabs, but he's kind of down the depth chart, and he was playing late in the game as well.
Right. I think, one thing to monitor with Jahan Dotson is if his 12 personnel snaps go down. He was 4 for 4 last week. He was 3 for 5 this week. Mm-hmm. That's something that's a little bit alarming because we have a similar situation where he might only run 65% of the routes. That makes his fantasy value go down, I think. But right now, I don't really have any reason to drop him anywhere in any rankings or anything like that,
Mm-hmm. And then with this Commanders backfield, we've been taking a huge stand, and we don't feel that concerned about it. But Brian Robinson just that much better than Austin Eckler at this point. This week, I mean, they kind of split snaps last week, but it was in a different way. This game, Brian Robinson took 10 of the first 11 snaps, and then Austin Eckler took the next 7 and kind of finished it out with the ones when Jaden Daniels was in. So, and both of them did fine in their touches and rolls, but Brian Robinson's just so much better as a running back. I don't know why somebody would even try to convince themselves that. Don't chase what was 2 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
For what is right now.
I mean,
is what I'll say.
Eckler didn't even have a touch rushing the ball.
Yeah.
Which is interesting when he plays 7 straight plays, but whatever. On the Miami side of the ball, Johnny Smith looks possibly fantasy relevant. Just because I think he's going to be the wide receiver or the receiving tight end. Durham Smythe is always an issue. It had the same issue with Mike Gesicki because he's always on the field because he's such a good blocker.
Mm-hmm.
But Johnny Smith is going to be the receiving tight end. He'll get in probably 50, 60% of the snaps in 12 personnel, of course. And that gives him some floor, but I'm not excited about it.
It's not exciting, but I mean, if you're looking for 3 tight ends, which we're targeting 2 tight end builds, like we've been preaching this offseason in best ball drafts. But if you are looking for that 3rd tight end, or in a deep league, and you need a backup or something of that nature, like he's formidable.
Yeah,
I can
fine.
see him doing better than what like a Mike Gesicki did a couple of years ago with I think that was to his rookie year when he was kind of splitting with Ryan Fitzpatrick, but a similar kind of style of offense. But the other thing is Devon Achane lining up out wide and getting downfield targets. Obviously, that's without Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill in the game, but still fun.
Yeah, they're
fun
just
to talk about.
They're just being. He's Mike. I'm sorry, the head coach. What's his name? Mike McDaniel. I want to say McCarthy, and I was like, that's not. Mike McDaniel is doing Mike McDaniel things,
Yeah,
and it's fun. One other guy, Jalen Wright, missed for unknown reasons. I don't know if they're holding him out with the other starters or if he just, had an injury or something. But that's the only other thing for that game. And if you find it before I get to Indy, Arizona,
nothing.
Yeah,
at the top. But the other thing was just kind of want to reiterate, we are completely Raheem Mostert, and if you are on board, you cannot also be on board with Devon Achane.
Nope.
I saw a stat of somebody today of just supporting like Miami running backs and whatnot, and just how there's outliers, and that's how winners and league winners are won. The counterpoint is you're in the same wrong when you chase those outliers to have consistency.
Right.
So when you have a guy, again, doubled his career 8-year touchdown total in one season, and then you're going to be like, oh yeah, let's take him in the 6th round again, and he's 32 years old and he's the 1B, but it's okay.
What?
No.
You mean there's a thing called statistics, and if you're 3 standard deviations away from the mean, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I'm a math. Okay, I was a math major, but it's just not going to happen again. Like, and if it does,
then Achane complete bust at a 2nd round draft grade.
Right.
But I don't see it again this year where they combine for 30 total touchdowns. And if they do combine for 20, which is more realistic, it's not going to be more so to Raheem Mostert, which, look at our prospects prop video where we talk about things we liked in overs unders. One of the few unders that we were hammering and loving was Raheem Mostert, and his total touchdowns being 10. It's just like, no, just not this year. I don't see it at all, and I will die on the hill.
Yep. And then we'll go to the next game, Arizona versus Indy. Very quick. Should be no starters for either team. So that was, of course, gives us a little bit less to talk about. But if we're going to talk about the RB2 competition for Arizona, Benson was in for 16 out of 34. DeMarcado was in for 11 out of 34, and Michael Carter was in for 7 out of 34. Benson only plays 1st and 2nd downs. Like, it's just not a pretty sight right now, and I need some more.
The welcoming thing is he was much better. He went 9 for 43. But the biggest deal, like you said, he's not taking any 3rd down work. That's straight DeMarcado and Michael Carter. They're basically battling for that 3rd down back. So he's a true handcuff to James Conner. And so it's just, we had to move him down in our rankings because of that, because it's like, you're not showing us what we think you can be. Maybe still waiver wire target later in the season, buy low. We're still in belief and lock and step on that. But it's not coming together early in the season like we had hoped. And so it's just kind of something to be wary of if you are investing in him at this point. You still have to invest like being an RB4.
Yeah.
And so he's one of the biggest droppers right now as it stands. So maybe once he kind of gets down to the 140s, worth a shot. But again, still, if you're going James Conner, he's one of my favorite handcuffs, and he's officially gone below Blake Corum. And I just think that's the dumbest thing ever. Even though Blake Corum is having a good camp and good highlights, he's 25.
Yeah.
Benson's 21.
21, yeah.
He's behind a 29-year-old running back that has injury-prone issues. Kyron Williams led the league in touches per game last year.
And he's 6 months older.
And he's 6 months older than
than
they're the same
Corn.
age. So I'm just saying, if you're gonna do handcuffs and stuff like that, it's one to keep an eye on still.
Right.
But if you're talking about like a 1B, 1A situation, that's just not what it looks like right now.
And then the quarterback 2 battle there. Toon started over Ritter this week. It was backward. It was the other way last week. Ritter started, so I thought that was interesting. This is the one I was talking about. Christian Jones. Okay,
Gotcha.
He had 4 holding calls in 13 plays. In 13 plays, man, from Texas, from UT.
Yep.
That's what I was. Yeah, I was trying to get out earlier. I wasn't sure. That was pretty intense. I'll tell you what, they're not going to be very happy with him.
No, that's.
But what are you going to do? And then, yeah, that's all I have for Arizona, though. Just those 3 little things.
Yeah, and then with when it comes to Indy, they really didn't play much of anything that you could establish confidence in.
I think there's a big thing on Indy right now, and it's the fact that Mo Alley Cox and Kyler Granson's rested, while Jelani Woods is probably not going to make the roster. And he's one of those guys that we've talked about in best ball that we have zero.
Yeah, we don't have any, but we just had the flirtation of like maybe 19th, 20th round. And then it's just like, well, one, that's not the strategy we're going with. And I know depth charts on everything, but it's showing when,
playing
like you said,
time matters.
those guys aren't playing and you are playing with the 3s. And
yeah, he might get cut. And that's pretty intense for a guy that we originally thought was the starter. The other one is Goodson and Hull split reps because Trey Sermon's out.
He's still out.
Trying to figure out who the RB2 is. This is a battle for RB2 behind Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah,
so,
and I'm not sure if either one feel great about doing it, but
yeah,
it's worth a stab at, I guess.
I mean, I don't know that I want any, but I just think, if something happens, like we'll have a good idea of which one is the backup next week, hopefully.
Right.
And then we're gonna go to Seattle and Tennessee. Oh, there we go. Sam Howell is good at football.
Yeah.
Okay. We knew that. We talked about that. But
I'm telling you, Geno Smith is not playing this entire season.
I'm
telling you right now.
Did not believe you.
That should have been my bold prediction.
One
of them. I guess it doesn't feel that like
bold,
frisky. Like nobody's talking about it, but even if I'm against the grain, it doesn't like, oh, and now what? Oh, nothing. But I was right.
Well, no, I don't disagree with you. I think Sam Howell is the better quarterback. I just don't know that the Seattle Seahawks are going to pull Geno Smith.
Yeah.
And that's what we talked about. One of the things that Cam sent me and we talked about for Prize Picks and Underdog was, taking the unders for Geno Smith. And I was like, well, I just don't want to if just in case he is the starter for 17 games because I'm not comfortable that he's not going to do those things.
I have an interesting scenario because, again, Seattle's somebody that don't feel good about. But this year, we love a lot of their skill players,
right,
especially JSN, Kenneth Walker now, and some snippets of DK, right? They have some interesting trap games to start the season, right? So they are playing the 2 lowest win totals in the entire NFL the first 2 weeks. Denver, New England. They will be favored in both. Denver is the team of the preseason right now.
I might pick Denver.
And in fair weather, I'm not just giving Seattle that win. New England's on the road.
That's
across the country.
Interesting.
I'm not saying that I'm picking, but if they split or even possibly go 0-2, then they play Miami, Detroit. They have a Giants game in there, but then San Fran, Atlanta, Buffalo, all favored to win their divisions.
Right.
If you start out like 2-6, 2-5,
Sam Howell.
Goodbye, Geno, and you're.
Hey, if Sam Howell goes in, I'm gonna be so happy.
I know.
He's just gonna push the ball. He can throw interceptions. I do not care if he throws them.
And his style suggests he doesn't care. Geno's kind of more cared to like, I'm gonna throw the ball away, try to make the right play.
Right.
Sam is like,
no, Jameis Winston.
I can only win one way. I'm gonna try to win my one way.
Chunk
That's
that
totally
boy.
fine. I think he kind of suits more the up-tempo offense that they want to run. Again, if he does unseat Geno, all of the shares that we have of these skill players, I actually feel a little better about that I do. And it's kind of tough because when we've been maneuvering around, quarterback builds in these best ball teams, Geno by default made a lot of sense. But I was just like, if we're taking him, we have to take Howell. And
Yeah,
so we just kind of have taken the stance like, well, we might as well just take
not
best available quarterback
not take them exactly.
then take them both. But
Right.
again, if I were to take a Geno Smith build, Sam Howell is the handcuff of the century as a quarterback right now.
Absolutely. And then for Tennessee, pretty easy. Mason Rudolph sits and is the QB2 over Malik Willis. Not really that. Oh, sorry.
Will Levis. Well, he played one
Yeah,
series,
right.
but didn't play a ton.
Mason Rudolph will sit. My bad. After this, he is the QB2. They talked about it a lot that he was much better than Malik Willis, even knowing the stats don't necessarily show that. It was just like type of how he was handling the game, basically. And then RB3 battle, Chestnut versus Small, 10-8. That's basically all I have for Tennessee. I don't know if you have anything.
I mean, one positive report is DeAndre Hopkins. They're actually optimistic that his injury that he sprained his MCL, he'll actually be ready week 1, which is a positive thing. His ADP actually didn't drop as much as I thought it would because he was already in the 90s as a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 to begin with. And then, he's now in like the early 100s. I thought he would have just jumped down to like where Rashid Shaheed is and Dontavius Wicks, those kinds of guys. But he just kind of stayed there. Still worth stabs at if you want some wide receiver depth. I think he has one more year before he's just truly kind of washed. And, we'll just kind of see what happens. But that was one, I guess, positive thing to take away from fantasy-wise.
Yeah, and then the next game is going to be the Jets and Carolina. All right. And something fun to talk about. I wrote it down this way too. Is just the New York Jets running back battle for 2 and 3. It's not so much a battle. It's so weird because it's almost like they have like a RB1 and then they have a 2A 2B. If that makes sense, because like that's how it feels to me. It's not so much like they have a battle really going on and who goes in first. I'm pretty sure if it's a short yardage run, like we know who's going in. It's it's not it's going to be Braylon Allen, and if it's a 3rd and 14, you're probably going to see Isaiah Davis, and that's kind of how I see it going. And I don't know, that probably hurts Braylon Allen more than anything.
Well, I mean,
but
yeah,
at
he's
the same
never
time,
been a receiving back. I mean, in his 3 years in his career, he had 21 receptions combined in his first 2 seasons, and then his final season there, he had 28, but he had less than 5 yards a catch, which is less than his rushing yards per carry, and you never see that. So obviously, he is a very talented guy, very raw, but he's been impressing. But that's not the role that they want. So if they are kind of doing a change of pace thing with Brees Hall, I think they kind of want to step into the opportunity to where they don't have to force somebody who's out of his element in a role and just kind of in that nature. Because like AJ Dillon was never going to come in on 3rd and 15 for Aaron Jones when he went out. So that was just kind of my thought on that matter.
And then Malachi Corley had 0 routes in 12 personnel. He ran 100% of the routes in 3 receiver sets. Can't block, I guess. I don't know what that is probably the most likely situation though.
Maybe it's just kind of they know that Mike Williams, who is now off the pup, who we've been avoiding because this is the stupidest investment that you can make in best ball. We actually love his unders as well. But back to this, I think it's just kind of similar to Jahan Dotson. It's just like we know you're going to be in the slot, so we want to make sure that you're getting those kinds of reps because when you come into the game, that's where you're going to be.
Right. And then I will say that this is the game where our 70 total players were sat. The Jets sat 32 players. The Panthers sat 38, which is a lot. One thing I will say though is Jatavian Sanders did play. He played 11 out of 14 of the starter snaps. Tommy Tremble and Ian Thomas are out due to injury. Week 1, we could see Jatavian Sanders being the starter if he does well, because they don't really. No one has that job, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If he does well, he could be the starter.
Even though they were kind of mostly playing extreme backups and deep role players, he kind of had to based on the multiple injuries. They only have, I think, 5. Most people do 5, but I think they only had 4, if I remember correctly, tight end position ones.
I think so.
I think they picked up Felipe Franks and Jacob Hollister and Jesper, but that was after the injuries to the
Okay.
other two. So
That makes sense.
I think he had to get a little run. Plus, he is raw to begin with.
He's also young. He's one of the
He's young.
youngest guys
Yeah.
in that. So,
But yeah, he did play well, in the snaps that he did.
he had the most yards at 22 for the
Mhm.
whole team. That's but yeah, I think this game's pretty easy. There's not much to talk about. We can go to the next one, which is the Chargers, the LA teams.
Getting close. All right.
Well, we got to talk about Jordan Whittington, so let's do it.
Yeah, so he's the highest riser of camp, preseason, whatever you want to call it. Just incredible game once again. 5 for 52 on 8 targets. Stinson Ben once again played the entire game, and I just
don't understand that. I literally don't get it.
I don't know.
Rams, they only have 2 quarterbacks, and Jimmy Garoppolo on suspension.
Yeah, Jimmy's on suspension, and so they kind of have to play him for a couple weeks as a backup and just pray that Stafford doesn't go down. But Zach Evans, he got a ton of run. He and Boston Scott are kind of similar to what you said, but worse as a 3A 3B situation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a way that they have 4 running backs on game days. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see what style of running back they go. And I feel like they'll kind of lean towards Boston Scott a little bit just because of veteran presence and, maturity and all that stuff.
I think it's still up in the air, and I have no lean either way just based on snap counts and things from the first 2 weeks. Yeah, the Rams only have 2 quarterbacks. It's really weird. With the Chargers, Kamani is
Fun. Kamani Vidal.
Yeah.
We've been pronouncing his name wrong all summer.
Yes.
And that is something that I have a pet peeve about doing, and I led the charge. So that is a big apology on me, Mr. Kamani, but he finally played. And he did well.
Yeah.
11 touches. He kind of started over Patterson, I believe.
No, it was Patterson when it was starting, but he came in on the 3rd play or something.
Okay, 3rd play.
Yeah, it was early.
But yeah, and Patterson wasn't efficient. Kamani had multiple plays where he did really well, evading and making extra yardage when it wasn't there.
He is good at football.
He is good at football. Again, he's kind of similar to Trey Benson, where we're just like, we're not punting on our take on him and the stand that we took, but it might take a little longer than we anticipated.
Right.
I mean, obviously, we weren't going to see JK or Gus the entire preseason, but we thought it was just going to be Kamani show with all the ones if they were going to play, and that just kind of hasn't been the case. Sim kind of was yes, no, week 2. Week 3, it'll be interesting to see what they do. If they do just rest everybody. If he does rest with them, that would be cool to see. Or if he just plays the entire first half kind of thing.
Exactly. And then Brendan Rice starts over Shark. He's got a little bit of an injury. I think that might have been why. He's a little bit older. But he did play in the game, which I thought was interesting if he was just going to rest, He played 1 snap with the ones while Brendan Rice played every snap with the ones. And then the other guy I want to talk about, because he's always been a thorn in our side, is Donald Parham is a cut candidate. And he is the 4th tight end right now. And so he's not going to be catching 2-yard touchdowns and screwing up everything that we love.
Right.
So,
and then also, this was just announced today, but Justin Herbert finally started practicing again. Yeah. It is light, but that is a good sign because there was no threat of him missing week 1, but I was concerned about like a Joe Burrow-esque thing where it just lingers and could get worse or aggravated early in the season, and you just never want to see your quarterbacks going in banged up. Even the year when in 2022, I believe, when 2021 when Dak came in with a calf injury and he was okay and he broke his thumb. It's just bad vibes when you have a quarterback already injured to start the season.
Yeah. And then we'll go to the next game. It's Tampa Bay versus the Jags. Let's start on the Jags side of the ball because they're pretty cut and dry. Tank Bigsby is the RB2. Mac is a solid quarterback too, in my opinion, versus, the rest of the league. He's not a bad backup to have as your, team backup.
I really wish he would have went to a situation where he could have flirted with challenged or been a possibility to, eventually be the guy.
Right.
Like a Los Angeles Rams would have been nice. A Seattle would have been nice. Guys that are aging out, veterans that probably not going to start over unless they get hurt, but you can prove enough to where they actually give you another shot. There is no shot with Jacksonville. Like Trevor's that guy. He just got extended, and it never was going to be close. So it's interesting that he was traded there. It's just kind of like an audition for everybody, and so it's kind of like similar to where Baker, mid-season after the Carolina
Yeah,
issue,
Carolina.
went to the Rams out of nowhere, and then kind of revived his career because he was like traded to or signed by the Rams on Tuesday, and then
And then
Thursday night played,
Yeah.
and then had a game-winning drive.
Yes.
That
I remember
one
that. It was
moment
crazy.
revived his career and is why he went to Tampa Bay, and now
Is paid.
trickled down.
Yes.
So I see Mac kind of in a similar light,
Right.
and I just don't know if when he'll have the opportunity to do so. But he'll be an interesting name to talk about next summer for sure.
Mm-hmm. And then the other guy that I want to talk about for the Jags, last guy on the Jags that I care about is Brian Thomas Jr. He played, and that should not be concerning to anybody. He is a rookie, and Christian Kirk is out, and other players are out, and they needed some players. Brian Thomas is like, I'll play. Shoot, let's go do it. So not worried about him. No. And then for Tampa Bay, Bucky Irving's RB2. We knew that, but
sorry, go ahead.
Huh?
I said Brian Thomas actually played 22 snaps.
He played with all the starter snaps, I believe, and then was out.
All right, continue.
Bucky Irving, RB2, no problem there. They rested 31 players, and right now the only thing that really matters offensively and for fantasy is we don't know who the wide receiver 3 is, because it just depends where they're going to play Chris Godwin. And we haven't seen where they're going to play Chris Godwin. He could be the slot or he could be outside.
It just kind of seems like it'll be the slot based on last week where Jalen McMillan and Trey Palmer went straight up only slot snaps. So it sounds like that's kind of the route that they'll do, where Chris Godwin's 2 receiver set, but then moves inside when they're 3 receivers. But Jalen McMillan, all 12 with the ones. So did Trey Palmer.
Yep. Just up in the air still. That's a battle right now.
One welcoming thing is, we talked about Sean Tucker a little bit last year. He was kind of undrafted, very unspectacular back, but productive in college at Illinois. No, I'm Syracuse. Sorry, they're both orange and blue. But undrafted guy that we were like, okay, well, Rachaad White is inefficient. He's not that great, so maybe you can flirt with being a 1B to him and maybe steal goal line work. Well, even as Rachaad White was one of the most inefficient running backs in football, he still got all the snaps.
Yes.
So I actually think it's interesting with Bucky, who's been productive and he could be more efficient, that could really eat into Rachaad White's role. And I'm not sure if that'll mean Bucky Irving by default gets the 80% of snaps and inefficient. But maybe that opens up a little bit more for Sean Tucker to kind of contribute a little bit as well, because he's kind of by default the third running back now that Keyshawn Vaughn's gone and nobody else to really contest with. Chase Edmonds, really, I don't know if he's still on the team, but he was to start the offseason.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't think that he'll make the team because we haven't seen him.
Yeah.
Who is it? DJ Williams?
Yeah, he's on the team, but he's behind Sean Tucker now.
I have not seen him play one time.
Exactly.
So. And he's older, so that could be something about why, but I mean, it just doesn't make sense. But yeah, so let's go to the Dallas Raiders game. Hard game to even try to watch, which, of course, it's our teams, which is awesome.
Right. Well, the biggest thing is Trey Lance looked much better.
He did.
Week 2.
He did.
Obviously, he led drives, but he wasn't finishing them. This time, a little bit more pushing the ball downfield. Ran one in, had a really nice back shoulder to Ryan Flournoy. And, I don't know what to do with him. I don't see him at all as the future of Dallas, but I don't know what route he has. Kind of similar to Mac Jones to really audition and just finding the opportunity elsewhere. Because unless that goes down and he's forced to start, I just don't see a way where...
Is he even the backup, though?
I mean, he played most...
Well, yeah, but last week it was Cooper who started.
Know.
It's just that's my problem. I don't even know if he's going to be the backup, and he just kind of has no door right now. He's got to find a door to open.
Yeah.
It's just tough. Running back 3 is undefined. Freeman, Davis, and Vaughn are all just kind of running back 3 right now. We don't know who's going to make the team and who's not.
I bet if I had to guess, I bet you it'll be Deuce Vaughn
and Davis.
Malik Davis being the special teams guy.
Yeah.
Because Dallas is one of the teams that does like to have 4 running backs.
Yeah.
A lot of times, and then when you have just Rico Dowdle and Zeke in front, that's not going to mean that 100% of touches are there. So But yeah,
Yes.
that's kind of would be my anticipation. Russ Freeman, I feel like was just kind of a body to get through camp,
Right.
on his last legs, all that good stuff.
Devontae Turpin sits, possible injury. We don't really know. There was no report on it, so I don't really know what that means. But that's all I have for Dallas. On the other side of the ball, the Raiders. Zamir White concerns. I'm not sure if I'm concerned. He played into the second half, and he only played situational football. Like he only
Yeah,
played when they were going into the end zone or coming out of the end zone and those types of situations, or a third down where they wanted to get him the ball. He only had 4 carries. He started the game, and then I don't know. It's
it
a
was
weird
weird.
thing. It's a weird thing.
It wasn't. I don't know. It's just concerning a little bit. Just that I saw excuse me, somebody put up a stat where running backs haven't been in like the top 50 if they played in the second half of a
Yeah, I
preseason
saw
game
that.
in like 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't like he played all first half and then into the second half. It was like he played 2 possessions, didn't play the rest of the first half, and then played like the first possession of the second half.
Yeah, I don't know. I
I
really
don't
don't
know.
know.
It's weird. I just don't know. It's hard to have confidence with him because he's just one trick pony. He'll have 20 carries and 60 yards and a touchdown, maybe, and no passing work whatsoever. So,
Right.
and he's going in the 6th round. So that's just kind of a recipe for disaster in my eyes. I don't know. It's tough.
He had 4 carries for 23 yards.
Mhm.
I don't know. Very weird. And then Michael Mayer is good at football.
Yes.
So that's good to know. Without Brock this time around, which was good to see him out there. And then Alexander Madison only runs routes. He played 7 snaps, 3 snaps, 3 routes. And that's it. So he's the third down back, and that's basically all we have him for right now. But yeah, so that's basically all I got for them.
Yeah, so
Pretty easy.
then we'll go to the Monday night games and get out of here. The biggest story of the weekend, obviously playing on prime time, Bo Nix looked incredible again. Shouldn't be a surprise.
He's
61 start should
24 years old.
mean you're looking good enough to be in. It would just kind of be a disservice, honestly, if Denver even considered starting Wilson or
No,
Stidham over
it's
him.
not going to happen.
I think he just kind of sealed it with his performance. The pleasant thing was Tim Patrick coming back. Back-to-back season-ending injuries before the season even started, and coming back, and he's having a good preseason. He had 4 for 30, and he caught the lone touchdown. And it looked good. The other thing, obviously, this is a very fantasy relevant topic, but Javonte versus Jaleel, or is it Javonte and Jaleel? Both of them kind of evenly split in snaps. Jaleel actually had a little bit more snaps, but also they were in situations to where it kind of catered more to his skill set.
Mm-hmm.
But both of them did well. Javonte actually caught a touchdown that got called back.
Yes.
Due to a legal forward pass, but he and I honestly, I'm starting to get on the Jaleel train just because I just know he's going to have like 50 catches. And if we're talking PPR rankings, he may not be, competing with Javonte for the goal line work or flirting with a 50-50 split in terms of touchdowns and whatnot.
Right.
I just know that I think it goes back 10 years now. Sean Payton-led offense has been top 5 in running back targets every season. And in limited work last year, Javonte had an off year and still had 47 receptions. Jaleel McLaughlin was kind of a part-time player. He still had 31.
Yeah.
So if they're just both the 1A, 1B for now, they could both flirt with over 60 receptions and both return value, especially where they're currently going. That doesn't mean that we're going to force him into drafts because he is an obvious riser, and so is Javonte at this point. We're still on the Javonte train. He has played well. He's had a great camp, contrary to what everybody tried to make you believe. But now it may kind of seem like Jaleel also will have a defined role, and maybe it's more of a, Darren Sproles and Pierre Thomas kind of thing. Again, I don't know.
So I think then you're expecting Samaje Perine to be cut. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I think
that's definitely
I think it's
something
over with.
we need to stay, because at that point you would have Javonte and Audric, who are similar players, but Jaleel's a little bit different, can catch the ball.
Right.
So it makes sense. Audric's the last guy up. It is what it is. We did see Jaleel play inside the 10-yard line for 2 plays. Bo threw a touchdown I guess that was the Tim Patrick touchdown
Mm-hmm.
when that happened. So we did see that. So that was a little weird because we were talking about situationally. Well, we don't really see him doing that, and then he did it right then and there. I'm like, well, that sucks.
So I just kind of see it as like this offense. I think is going to be better than most people expect.
Yes.
And on top of that, Denver is going to be much better than people expect. We are going to go to Louisiana this week to make parlay bets, and I guarantee you that Denver 5.5 is
It's
probably going to
so
be in there.
easy.
Is one of the easiest bets to do right now. And I just feel like if they're going to do that and they're going to have an efficient offense, it's not going to be just straight up outside. They have no below average tight end room, below average receiving core, but if it's just going to straight up go through the running backs, there's avenues, and I think the talent complements in each other enough to where both of them can produce. Even if we are believers in Javante becoming an RB2 again, I still think that Jaleel can be a top 40 running back. And right now, if he's going outside the top 50, you're returning value if you're getting him as an RB6.
Right. Absolutely. And then we'll go to the last. Oh, I haven't even talked about the Packers. Apologies.
Well, they finished with 2 points. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say actually, Matt LaFleur was not happy about the game. He said it was humbling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you don't really want to hear that. Packers may roster 4 running backs is something that's interesting. Emmanuel Wilson is a guy that could be ended up as the 4th running back on the roster, especially with the injury to Marshawn Lloyd.
Yeah, I think it's kind of has to do with the, like you said, the Marshawn Lloyd injury. I think put a hamper in things, and then also AJ Dillon is so limited what he is and what he offers, and he doesn't play on special teams.
Yep.
So you need the guy to be the up back and maybe be a kick returner or what have you of that nature. I think it makes sense, at least in the short term.
Yeah, and that's all I have for Green Bay. Actually, they did not do anything well. The 2 points,
Yep.
It was not pretty, especially for their quarterbacks, Pratt and Sean Clifford.
Yep.
So
last game.
Yep. Let's get to Saints and San Francisco. This week, Spencer Rattler starts, which was good to see. I'm sorry, not starts. Let me rephrase that. I think Derek Carr started. I apologize. He was the first one in after Derek Carr, which was good to see because we expected him to be that guy over Hayner. And so he came in. That was good. And Taysom Hill looked awesome. So he lined up in every spot.
He's basically, he's kind of the outlier that we're talking about. And if he is tight end eligible in any league that you have or any best ball league that you're drafting on, he is worth a look, even if he is 34 years old.
Yep. And then Foster Moreau played 22 out of 22 snaps at tight end. That's good for him because with Hill being an athlete, he's going to be the main tight end until Juwan Johnson gets back. If Juwan Johnson can take that spot back, Foster Moreau was a Raider for a long time, very good football player, just never got his opportunity. So
yeah, and then also Talise Fuaga before the game on Thursday, he left with a back injury. So they are already dealing with Ryan Ramczyk being out for the year. Trevor Penning has been a bust.
Yes.
What he is, Cesar Ruiz has underwhelmed. And if Talise Fuaga cannot step up, this is the worst line in the NFL.
This is the worst line in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
That's how bad it is.
It's really, really bad. And they have a very reasonable schedule, and they're probably going to win more games than you would think. But if it weren't for them being the tied for the easiest strength of schedule, I would peg them as a top 5 pick this year.
Well, we if you watch our bold predictions that comes out on Friday, you might see something bold about the Saints finishing this year.
Right. So yeah, it doesn't look good right now, and I already know who I want to start week 1 in my DFS lineups.
There you go.
And so that's a great thing.
On the other side of the ball, the other team that's falling apart is the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah.
Can we just all right, we're gonna do the Brandon Ayuk thing first. It's pissing me off. I'm over it. I'm so over it. I need them to make a decision. I need him to go somewhere. I need him to just stop doing this craziness, ridiculousness. But yeah, so we're still talking about it, unfortunately, and it's 2 weeks from the season. Jordan Mason has a minor injury, which is just add to it. They have no running backs again.
4 running backs now down with injury. And I'm not even counting Cody Schrader, who I don't even know what he's dealing with, but he's dealing with something.
Matt Breida had 7 rushes, and he's just got picked up off the streets. Keyshawn Vaughn, and of course, Coach Trader. It's just everybody is hurt. Purdy looked less than stellar, to say the least.
Yeah, he had a very, very junior high-esque throw.
That was hilarious.
That was hilarious. And it's just like,
and it should have got picked off.
It's like, if that's what you're, there are certain guys that I'm okay with dealing with because this is kind of like the player that they are. We talked about Sam Howell. He's the gunslinger
right.
of this kind of.
Take the good with the bad.
Exactly. Tony Romo kind of thing where like you're going to turn the ball over, but he's going to make some fun plays as well. Brock Purdy, your niche is doing all the little things right.
No turnovers.
Your niche is not, oh, I'm going to make something spectacular happen. And when you try to, I promise you that is going to hurt your pockets more than you can ever know in a contract year.
Yeah. Well, he's going to, either way, he's making money, but geez, Louise, that was terrible. He was 2 for 6 for 11 yards. I mean, it's just, you can't have less than 2 yards of pass.
It's funny. There was a doctor sports reporter that kind of reacts to injuries that was reacting to one of Brock's throws, and he was just like, yeah, if you keep on making plays like this, I'm paraphrasing, like, how do you expect somebody to pay you $35 million a year? And it's just like, you're not informed about what he's about to get, because it's not even
35?
close to 35.
No way.
It is going to be north of 50, probably the same exact contract that Trevor Lawrence is going to got, which is 55. Yeah. That's what he is getting. I promise you, that's what he's getting.
They're going to be bad for a while.
Exactly. That will be the beginning of the end for the 49ers as soon as he puts pen to paper. But yeah, I thought that was funny. Just, it's like, quarterback market is a different animal now than it was just a year ago.
Yes.
And yeah, even if you're like, oh, you can't even pay him $30 million. Nope. You don't realize they're about to pay him more than that. And then once Deshaun kind of inherits where he's able to be moved on from, because Cleveland's kind of trapped, it becomes instantly the worst contract in football to me.
Mm-hmm. One thing I will say about this team, and we talked about it last week, is their offensive line is beat to hell. And I'm going to tell you all right, I'm going to say to everybody right now, if they can't get these like situations figured out before the season, the Brandon Ayuk situation, the O-line situation, they have injuries kind of everywhere, all over the field. Drake Greenlaw's out still. They're going to have some...
Pooney showed some flashes, but it's Colton McKivitz also was awful last season.
So terrible.
It's, again, but one of the worst lines in football if it weren't for Trent Williams. And
he's not playing.
He's not playing.
Jalen Moore is playing. I don't even know who that is. Like, that's... Chris Hubbard is a guy I know, and he's the backup. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. It's just... It's not as pretty as it's been, I guess.
Yeah, they fortunately have a reasonable schedule to start the year. Obviously, they're at home against the Jets, which really is starting to kind of lean more towards the Jets in spite of all their drama that they're doing, because at least they're having people on the field.
I agree.
But then after that, you have Minnesota, New England, Arizona, all projected to be last in their division, and then a neutral site, essentially a game with the Rams. So maybe you can kind of weather the storm a little bit. And even if you start 2-3, last year they had 3 straight losses and were 500 and then went to the Super Bowl after like 8 or 9 straight wins that they just rallied off.
Right.
So they'll get it right, and then they'll eventually blow out Dallas, because that's what happens when they play Dallas. So they'll eventually get there, but don't be surprised if San Fran has a little bit slower start this season.
Yep. But that is all the games. Let me close that out, bring y'all back over here so we can see.
Well, I was a big liar when I said we weren't going to come close to.
Yeah, I was literally about to say that. I was like, yeah, we took an hour and a half on the. We're going to be on the dot, damn near. But we appreciate y'all hanging out with us, and we hope that this is informative enough to help y'all understand kind of things that are happening in the NFL and what you need to be looking for when you start drafting. Things are changing, and they change every week. Shoot, they change. Last Monday, we were getting ready for the show, and Jahmyr Gibbs got injured, and I was like, okay. Mm-hmm. So just adding to it. But yeah, so this is a show that we try to put together for information that helps y'all, get ready for the season and your teams.
Right. Yeah, we appreciate you guys. Can't thank you enough. Please like, comment, subscribe. Please participate. Please comment. Follow us on our socials. We're going to prioritize being more active on Discord and Instagram and Facebook and all that good stuff, so we can not only have a variety of fans, but also be catering to those that are interacting. Because right now we want interactions. That's the biggest thing that we're craving right now. And this is the meat and potatoes of the off season, the biggest important time of the year. 17 days from now, as of this recording, is the first kickoff. Super excited for it. It's prime time season for draft in terms of fantasy football. We're going to be live streaming for the next 3 weeks on Wednesday nights, so please tune in for that and do all those things. We have videos coming out basically every other day and sometimes even earlier than that. So a lot of stuff to watch, a lot of stuff to interact to and react to. So please do that.
Yep, we appreciate it, and we will see y'all on the next one.
Take care.